Hello, you're welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming again. And today I want to continue in the series that I started some time now. That is first aid basic concepts. And this is part 3. I've already done part 1 and part 2. So in part 1 and 2, I defined some important concepts like what is first aid, who is the patient, what is the emergency, who is the first aider. And I also, in part 2, covered another important concept, which is the objective. Why do you perform first aid? What is the reasons why people make the effort to learn the skills necessary to attend to somebody who is in emergency situation. And today I want to define another crucial, another important concept which every first aider must be accustomed with. He should know this. He should actually know what this concept about, and it is called Good Samaritan Law or Act. Good Samaritan Law or Act. So, Good Samaritan Law is a law that protects the first aider from liability. So, Good Samaritan Law protects the first aider from liability. Remember that the first aider is the person who is assisting. First aider is somebody who is providing basic care to somebody who is injured or somebody who is sick as a result of emergency. And remember that emergency is an unplanned incident. It's an unplanned situation that warrants immediate care, immediate intervention. Okay, so for the first aider who is providing the necessary basic care, okay, remember that what the first aider does is basic care. Okay, why waiting for the emergency medical services who will be bringing the advanced or higher care? So the first aider, in the meantime, while waiting, will be able to, control, will be able to, minimize the likely impact that emergency may have upon the person. That is, one of the reasons why we perform first aid. Okay, to remember, it is to promote recovery, to preserve life, and to prevent more injury. Okay, so but there is a law that protects the first aider. When you provide first aid, there are some degree of risk involved. Okay, yes, there are risks involved. But this law ensures that the first aider is protected, from any liability, from anybody claiming anything because you want to help that person. So this law is actually protective. This law forms a layer of protection, legally speaking, and this layer is provided to the person who is providing first aid. Okay, so you are not alone. Don't think that, when you provide first aid, you are just alone, that anybody can just capitalize on that and begin to claim a lot of stuff. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay? But remember that this law does not prevent somebody from being sued. Okay? It doesn't prevent that. Rather, it protects you. It can also reduce liability in some cases. So, but the primary objective of Good Samaritan Law is to protect the first aider from liability. But it could also reduce liability in some cases where protection is not altogether achieved. Okay, in some cases where maybe the person is found guilty one way or the other, but this law will try to minimize whatever the penalty will be. But again, the main reason why there is Good Samaritan Law is to protect the first aider. So the first aider is protected from liability, so that somebody will know. For instance, if you are performing CPR and somebody dies eventually, or somebody did not make it, it's not your fault. Okay, so somebody cannot just come around and say, okay, why didn't you resuscitate the person? There's no contract. What you did is just to, it's an attempt. First aid is an attempt. Okay? There is no guarantee that it's going to yield, the expected dividend, even though that is the intention. So nobody can just say, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. Okay, as long as you provided or you provide basic care, you did what you're supposed to do. If the result, if the result is not achieved at the end of the day, it's not a liability on your side. And this is actually what the Good Samaritan Law, ensures, that you are protected from such, claim, from such liabilities. I hope this is clear. So this is supposed to be, supposed to be a motivation and encouragement to anybody who wants to help during emergency. Okay, so now, but for you to benefit, so this is like, Good Samaritan Law is like a coverage. Okay, it's just like a coverage. So you are covered, you are protected. But for you to benefit, for you to actually be covered appropriately, sufficiently, you have got some obligation. There are some responsibilities on your part. So you cannot just say, oh, I am protected, and then you begin to do whatever you like. No, there are some expectations on your own side. You must fulfill those obligations for you to be protected by Good Samaritan Law. And I'm going to list some of them, the main ones, on the board. Okay, number one is use reasonable skills. So when you provide first aid, use reasonable skills. That is expected. So if what you do is not reasonable, don't expect this law to protect you. An example is when you perform chest compressions. Chest compressions are supposed to be performed on the chest. So if you perform chest compression on the belly or on the neck or at the back, spinal cord area, that is not reasonable. And so in that case, Good Samaritan Law may not be able to protect you. Number two, remain within scope. Okay, so first aid has a scope. Remember that the definition of first aid is basic care. That is the scope there. It is basic. Anything other than basic is no longer first aid. Remember in the my first 2 presentations on this series, I think that should be part 2 or part 1 if I'm not mistaken. You can check it out. I think it's part 1. I differentiated first aid from medical help. Medical help is a higher help. Okay, so and that is outside the scope. So if you provide the higher help, like giving medication, okay, is a higher help. So that is not within scope. So make sure that when you perform first aid, it is basic. You don't need any other knowledge other than what you learned during first aid course. That's all you need to perform first aid. Okay? So make sure that you are within scope for you to enjoy the Good Samaritan Law. Number 3, we talk about obtaining permission. Okay, so permission or consent. So yes, when you perform first aid, before you even start, before you start performing, before you start helping somebody, you must obtain permission from that person. You must seek permission. Yes, you must. It's expected. Okay, my name is this and this. I am trained in first aid. Can I help you? So when you say, can I help you, you are seeking consent and it is expected. So you don't just jump into somebody and begin to provide care when you have never sought consent from that person. Okay? If the person is conscious, the person is adult, the person is of age, sound, so you expect the person to give you what you call voluntary consent. So consent is voluntary. Okay. Otherwise, if the person is unconscious and is not able to give you permission, you use what you call implied consent. Implied consent. So permission must be sought. Permission must be obtained. So another one is that you should not abandon. So never abandon the patient. Abandon. Don't abandon. So don't abandon. Okay, don't do that. So abandonment talks about you leaving the person. Okay, you leaving the person you have already started to help. You just you make a U-turn and just walk away. Okay, but then if it is as a result of danger, that is understandable. Okay, but you cannot just abandon the patient and walk away. Okay, so before you go, the EMS, you will have handed this person over to EMS, or the person will have told you, I'm okay. So the person is okay now. The person can tell you, thank you so much, I'm good. Okay, but other than that, if this person is still vulnerable, this person is still in need, and you just walk away, that is abandonment. You can become liable as a result of that. So the final thing I want to talk about is privacy or confidentiality. Okay, so whatever you do during first aid, confidentiality must be kept private. Whatever that happens, okay, it's not what you go and share, begin to share in social media. Okay, so those are the important obligations from the first aider. So when you have done all this law will protect you. I hope you now understand what Good Samaritan Law is. It is a law that protects us, first aider, from liability. So before you go, before we end this presentation, I want to ask you, please, if you have not subscribed, I want you to do that. Just hit the red button once. Do it once. Okay, you can share and like the videos. Thank you so much, and wait for my next video. Bye.